I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my god, there's a baby inside of me. Hi guys, and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Jasmine. I am 22 years old and I'm 25 weeks pregnant with my first child. Today I'll be talking about how I found out I was pregnant and my first noticeable symptoms up until about week 8. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Make sure to press the bell notification thing if you want to get notified when I put up new videos. Let's get right in. Having a late period for me is nothing unusual. I quite have really irregular periods and I won't have a period for like 4 or 5 months, and I'll go to doctors and be like, what's wrong with me? And they'll be like, are you stressed? And I'm like, nah, you don't say. And I'll take negative tests, I'll have test upon test, and it'll all come back negative. So it's just become normal for me not to have a period. So when I was a little bit late or something like that, it's not really something that's cause for concern for me because it's my normal, you know. So it's become quite a habit of me just to check, just to have pregnancy tests on hand, purely because I'm like a stressy, anxious person. So I would, even when I wasn't having sex, even before having sex, I would still be like, oh my god, I'm gonna be the Virgin Mary, I'm gonna have a baby, God's gonna choose me as his, literally, I used to be like this. So I'm just a stressy person that will convince myself like, you need to go and take a pregnancy test just in case. And I'd much rather have like the peace of mind. It's a really expensive habit and I do not recommend it for people. But if you are like me and you're anxious about this kind of stuff and you'd rather just get checked, just do it. Just take the pregnancy test. There's no harm in doing it. So I just make sure that I have like a stack of them on hand. I've got like the clear blue ones. I've got some like cheap ones from like the Poundlands. I've got some first response ones that as well. I just kind of get a few different types of them, a few different sensitivities, and I just go with it. It was weird because I hadn't noticed anything that would make you think you're pregnant, because obviously the first main sign of like pregnancy is a late period, and for me that's every month. Like that's nothing to like freak out about. So I just was like, I haven't had a period in a while, let me go and take a test. So I went and took a test and it came back positive, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant. Would you look at that? Who would have thought? And it was just like this giant feeling of happiness washed over me because I didn't think that I could have children, purely because of how irregular my periods were. I thought that I would have a lot of difficulty getting pregnant, and obviously we weren't trying, but we weren't actively not trying. Like we weren't using protection and we weren't trying, so I already had these concerns that I would have trouble conceiving. So when this did happen, it just felt like a giant blessing for me because obviously it satisfied my worries and put them to rest that I can have children and I can conceive. And it was just a blessing from the start, and it really changed my whole perspective this whole year. Because personally this year I know it's been really crappy for everyone, and ever since I found out, and that was in June, in June when I found out, my kind of outlook for the rest of the year has just changed because I have this little blessing on my way. In the first few weeks I did see a couple of things, but it was kind of hard to distinguish that between what my normal PMS symptoms are. But for me, one of the first things that happened was my boobs definitely got bigger, they started to swell. That was the first noticeable thing that my boyfriend noticed, and he'd always joke like, your boobs are getting bigger or your boobs are getting heavier, you need to go and take a pregnancy test. And I'd be like, boy, it's just my periods on the way, like don't worry about it. And obviously I was wrong. I did start getting some like boob tenderness. They were quite more sensitive than they used to be. That's definitely something that I noticed very early on. I defo noticed being tired a lot of the time. And I'm normally someone that's tired a lot, but this was a different level of tired. It was like I'm tired and I can nap. I'm tired and I want to be in my bed asleep, rather than I'm tired and I go to my bed and I can't fall asleep, you know, the ones. This was actually one where I was tired and I could actually fall asleep, and for me that's not normal to just be able to fall asleep at any time. So it definitely did kind of stick in my brain like, you were a lot more tired at the start. I did have some bloating, but then again, bloating is very similar to PMS symptoms where you do maybe get a bloat. I know I do when I normally have my period. So I did have some bloating, but again I put that down to like, oh, it's just a period. So after I found out I was pregnant, I was definitely watching my symptoms a lot more than when I was before I knew. Makes sense. But in the first 4 weeks I didn't really know anything. I didn't know I was pregnant, but after I knew I was pregnant, after I had that first big fat positive, I definitely was keeping track of my symptoms a lot more and noting them down. So then when I did go and see my midwife, I could be like, okay, cool, I've had all these, this is the list of symptoms, is everything fine, am I okay? And because that's how I am, and they just sit there like, you're fine. You're fine. I am definitely a symptom watcher. So for me, I did start keeping track a lot better once I knew I was pregnant. One of the first things I noticed after having that big fat positive was that I was very hungry, or I was extra hungry, and I just wanted to munch on things. And I know this sounds really weird, but for the first trimester especially, I really did like crunching ice or chewing gum, or the sensation of chewing something. Like I didn't actually have to be eating it, but I just wanted to be like crunching something. It's really odd behavior, but hey, that's what pregnancy did to me. Mind your business. Yeah, so I was extra hungry. I was definitely eating a lot more, and on top of being extra hungry, I was extra tired. So super tired, regularly taking naps in the day, those kind of things, and just resting as much as possible. I did continue to have the bloating that I mentioned prior to having the big fat positive. That continued, and I just started to have a little bloat. And obviously when you are pregnant, you start going, oh my god, oh look at my stomach, it's gonna get so big, that kind of stuff. That wasn't my experience, and we'll definitely get into that in another video, but for now I did have some bloating. One of the most noticeable changes that I had was hormonal, in terms of like, I became so moody. Like the mood swings, the mood changes that I was having, they would just be hitting people left, right and center. It was bizarre. I felt like I was this all the time. All the time. I don't know how anyone around me managed to firm it, because it was just irrational. It was just irrational at the start. I was hella emotional. It could literally be like, my sister would say she was going to the park without me and I'd start crying. I could just be upset that I dropped my straw on the floor in a restaurant and I'd start crying, and I was just sitting there like, girl, is you good? I'd just be so emotional. I would just be so emotional, and I think that's definitely down to like the hormones starting to change and how it's affecting you, that kind of stuff at the start. But that was definitely one of the major symptoms that I got at the front at the start of this, was being hormonal and having major mood swings and mood changes and just being kind of all over the place because of that. With the bloating, I did have some like cramping, and it felt like period pain cramping, but without the period. And for me, I guess that might be down to, I don't know, early ligament movement. I'm not quite sure. I'm not a health provider, so don't hold me to it. But I did have some cramping alongside the bloating. Even though I was eating a lot, I was drinking a lot, I was peeing a lot, I was sleeping a lot, I was getting headaches. And for me, getting headaches or migraines aren't really a thing. So when these do happen, I'm like, I notice them a lot more because of it. So I was getting headaches, and they weren't like related to being dehydrated because I was drinking a lot. They weren't because I was tired, because I was sleeping a lot, I was having all these naps, and I was eating, and it wasn't related to like sugar or anything like that. So it was just these random headaches that would come on, and be there for a bit and then go away. One of the next symptoms, and this is probably one that a lot of women experience, not everyone does, was the nausea. And I think the start of the nausea kind of symptom was when I started to smell things a lot stronger. Like I'd be in my room and I could smell like something in the kitchen, and the kitchen's downstairs and like a few rooms over, so the smells doesn't normally travel as strongly as it did, but I was definitely picking up a lot more smells. And this is great for nice smells, but when it comes to nasty smells, or not even nasty smells, just some things you just would smell, and I would be like, even if I liked them beforehand, I'd smell them and I'd be like, ew, I'm gonna go and be sick. So this is when like the heightened smell kind of came in alongside the nausea. It definitely did trigger it. So I'd be smelling things and I'd be like, I'm gonna go and be sick. I feel like I'm gonna be sick. I would sit there and I'd be like, oh my god, I feel like I'm gonna be sick. And my sister would be looking at me like, you're so dramatic, what is wrong with you? And it's weird because normally when people talk about pregnancy, they talk about like, oh, morning sickness. Now, first of all, morning sickness can happen any time of the day. Not everyone gets morning sickness. And even if you have morning sickness, you can have that, but without actually having to vomit. And that is the nausea that I was experiencing. So for me, I was having a lot of nausea and not actually being able to vomit, which is, I guess, good, because no one likes vomiting, because that's nasty. But I just didn't like all the time, like, oh, I'm gonna be sick. All the time. At everything, every day, something was triggering me to want to run to the bathroom. I get to the bathroom, I'm like, okay, cool, open up the toilet, I'm about to be sick. Nothing at all. So I was having a lot of nausea, a lot of things were just making me feel the sensation of wanting to be sick, but without actually being sick. Now, this one is a bit TMI, but if you're here, I hope it will help you. For me, I think I'm putting it down to the hormonal changes, and again, I'm not a doctor. I'm just putting it down to, it had to be something to do with the hormonal changes, because I was having these periods of time where it would be like diarrhea, and then I'd be constipated, and then it'd be diarrhea, and then I'd be constipated. And I was just sitting here like, bro, pick a struggle. Pick a struggle. I don't need the two of them. I don't need the stress. I don't need to know. I don't know what's going to happen when I go to the toilet. But yeah, that's definitely something that was happening to me. And if it does happen to you, like, don't worry. It's absolutely normal. It's probably down to the hormonal changes. Again, I'm not a doctor, but you can always ask your midwife if you have any questions or concerns over it. One of the last symptoms that I'm going to mention that I first noticed was gas. And this gas is ridiculous. That's all I can say. It's really bad. And trust me, I am in my 25th week right now. It just gets worse. So from the start, when you think your farts or your farts or whatever are bad, trust me, it just gets a lot worse later on in pregnancy. So prepare yourself for that one. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell if you'd like to be notified whenever I upload new content. Defo comment down below if you have any queries, any questions, any topics you'd like me to discuss in future videos, down below in the comment section, and I will be reading them and coming up with some responses for you. I do really appreciate your support, and hopefully you'll be here to continue my pregnancy journey with me